Welcome to the Living Out podcast, helping people, churches and society talk about faith and sexuality.
Hello, I'm Ashleigh, your host for this episode of the Living Out podcast. We are in a series where we're asking guests what it looks like to flourish in different areas of life as a Christian who experiences same-sex attraction. And this episode, we're going to be considering what it looks like to flourish when you leave a same-sex relationship. With me today, I have two guests who can speak to that experience. But before we get to that, I want to learn some other things about them as well. So Angela and Nat, welcome. Angela, maybe I'll come to you first. Hello. Can you tell us where you're from and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Angela. As you can probably tell by my accent, I am from the United States. I'm right in the Midwestern part. And then what I do, my day job is helping colleges recruit international students. But my heart vocation is writing. So I do mostly essays and poetries, and there'll be a book someday on something. Got lots of drafts, but yeah, that's the hope someday.
Beautiful. I am looking forward to reading that book when it comes into existence. And Nat, welcome back to the podcast. I think you appeared in our Different Stories series back in 2014? No, 2024.
2024. Yeah, not quite that far back.
2024. With your husband, Matt, wasn't it?
Yes.
But remind us kind of where you are, what you do with your time.
So I'm Nat. I live on the South Coast, and I'm a stay-at-home mum who also works for her church in a volunteer role, does some volunteering for the True Freedom Trust, volunteers for my kids' school, lots of busyness, but without any income.
Fantastic. And probably more hard work than I've ever done in a day. But there you go. So just one more question for you guys to tell us some more things about you before we get into the meat of this episode. If you had a year where you could do anything you wanted, so money is no object, you can pick up your life and your relationships and everything back where you left them at the end of this year, so you don't have to worry about, oh no, I didn't speak to my friend for 6 months. How's that going to go? So if you had this year, what would you do with it?
I would absolutely escape into the mountains. And yeah, no one would see me or hear from me in that year's time. So yeah, where I live is very flat right now. It's also where I grew up. So I'm used to this terrain, but I fell in love with the mountains once I moved out of this state and then overseas. And so it's just like my soul comes alive in the mountains, and the solitude and time and like just depth with God that you can get on a summit or, 4 or 5 miles into a hike is just, yeah, there's nothing like it for me. So that's probably what I would do.
I'm sensing you might be an introvert.
A little. I like people. I like being with people, but then I need to be alone to recharge so that I can be with people again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that. Nat, what would you do?
I would go to Japan for a year, and I would visit Studio Ghibli theme world. I'm a big fan of Studio Ghibli, but that's the cool reason I'd go. The main reason I'd actually go is I want to visit all their stationery shops. I absolutely love stationery, and the idea of money being no object and returning home with a container full of Japanese stationery that would last the rest of my life seems a bit of a dream come true. So
wow. I'm imagining like a storage container like you put on a ship, like one of those huge metal things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds dangerous. Yeah. I love the stationery plan. I'm also a big fan of stationery. I think I would just read and write, which might sound a bit dull and a waste of a year with all the money in the world and things, but I love books so much. I love stories. I love reading, and I never have enough time to get through what I want to get to. So the idea of having an uninterrupted year where I can just do that is dreamy to me. So Nat, we've had you on the podcast before, as I said, but it's been a little while. So maybe could you remind us something of your story around faith and sexuality?
Sure. So I think in one frame or another, I've pretty much always been aware that my sexuality is towards women. It's just part of my reality. But I knew that was different from other people probably around the age of 10. It's when I realised that other people didn't feel the same way that I did. I grew up in a non-Christian family, but I went to a Christian school and first started to learn about Jesus there. But there came this clash when I came out at 16 between faith and sexuality, which was not helped by a teacher at my school telling me that you couldn't be both gay and a Christian. They weren't compatible. And since I felt like I couldn't really do anything about the sexuality thing, I chose that side, as it were. Went off to university, joined the LGB, lived a kind of hedonistic lifestyle there. Left university, came home, met a woman, got engaged, bought a house together, and then things all kind of went a bit. They fell apart, I guess is the best way to put it. Our relationship wasn't very healthy, and she was quite controlling. And I ended up working in a new job, and I met a Christian. And previously, when I'd met Christians, I thought they were quite annoying. They were always quite happy. They didn't seem to have a reason for that. And they always kind of tried to dismiss what my teacher had said to me and write it off. And this Christian didn't. He was really angry that I'd been told I had to choose between the two. He told me about Jesus better. Long story short, I ended up going to church with him, and he then tricked me into an Alpha course. If you want to know more about that, you can listen to the other podcast. And during that, we had lots of conversations, and I ultimately decided that the life that I chose for myself had not been leading somewhere good. It never really ended up with me in a place that was good. And Jesus promised a good life. He promised a better life. He promised a better option. So I thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? I'll give it a try. And here I am, 16, 17 years later.
And how's it going so far?
It's had its ups and downs, but I think on the whole, he has promised better life, and it's been good on the whole.
Thank you, Nat. Angela, we've never had you on the pod before. Welcome. It's so good to have you. Could you share with us a bit of your story, just in terms of faith and sexuality?
Yeah, sure. So I came to faith when I was around 8 years old. Did the prayer, asking Jesus into my heart, and yeah, that was the beginning of my relationship with Jesus. I grew up in a Christian home, in a family, and in a church, and just kind of wider community that had very conservative views, like politically and theologically, and things like that. That includes purity culture. So I became a teenager in the late 90s, early 2000s, purity culture, when that was it's kind of had its heyday a lot, but it was just baked into at least American evangelical subculture at the time. It still kind of is, but that's not the point here. So books like I Kissed Dating Goodbye and Every Young Man's Battle, Every Young Woman's Battle is when I was a teenager, those were the big books that everybody was reading and trying to live their life by. And so it didn't really click with me until maybe late high school, so like 11th, 12th grade, that I was attracted to other women. And once I realized that, I don't know that there was a specific point that happened. It just kind of came as things do in high school when everything's just, emotions run amok and all that comes with high school. But once I kind of realized that, I was very, very afraid of that because I was taught to be afraid of it. That was the rhetoric and everything at the time. And again, unfortunately, it still kind of is. So Christian teachings, not directly from the pulpit in my particular home church, but in the Bible studies and things, and in the what was social media at the time, the Rob Bells and the all of these like studies that were put out and things that were posted on Facebook and stuff like that was saying like, oh, this is so bad. And the ex-gay movement was also pretty strong at that time as well. So I was like, I've got to hide this. I can't, no one can know, because there's also like this environment, this idea that being gay is even it's a separate class of sin that's even worse than all the other sins. So it's somehow worse than everything else. And so I'm like, okay, this cannot be anything that anyone can ever know about. So I spent most of my teenage years and adult life trying to pray the gay away and to not identify with my sin and all of those cliches that you hear. So it's taken until just the last few years here in my late 30s to untangle a lot of that internalized shame and internalized hatred, and to learn how to rest in the fact that maybe, just maybe, God doesn't hate me for experiencing same-sex attraction, or even for taking on identity language and saying, I'm gay, I'm a gay Christian, that God's maybe not going to send me to hell for that. That I'm not going to lose my salvation on this technicality, as it were. So yeah, it's been a journey, but yeah, this is where I'm at now.
Well, thank you for sharing some of that journey with us, Angela. So good to hear people's stories. So I know that leaving a same-sex relationship to follow Jesus is a part of my story, but I was a teenager at the time. And so that was hard and it was painful, but it was nowhere near as complicated as leaving a relationship in adulthood can be, which I know is something that is a part of both of your stories. So I wonder, could you just share a little more of your experiences here? Nat, maybe I'll pick on you again first.
Sure. Yeah. So as I said, I was engaged and we had a house together. So just on a kind of straight off the bat, we were financially linked together. I'd invested money in this house. It was in both of our names. It was also complicated by the fact that her parents had loaned us money, and it was a very complicated financial situation, sort of adding to the fact that she was also quite controlling. I didn't have a lot of access to any of our joint money. Just the practicalities of that was quite tricky. We had to pick some of it apart. I had to walk away from some money that should have come back to me, which was quite difficult to do. Obviously, I was only in my early 20s. I didn't have a lot of money to sort of be able to comfortably walk away from large amounts. And on a really practical level, I didn't have anywhere to live. I was homeless basically the moment that we broke up, which happened in the middle of the night. So from a practical point of view, there was quite a lot of difficulty around that. And I think the main difficulty, though, actually was I broke up at the same time as I became a Christian, which meant that my entire support network were one worldview and I had just shifted to another worldview. So in terms of all of my friends, they were mostly joint friends. And when they were given the option of having to pick a side, not that they should have had to pick a side, but that often happens in breakups, they weren't going to pick the one that had gone crazy and joined the wrong team as they perceived it to be. So overnight, I didn't just lose the person I thought I was going to be with for the rest of my life. I also lost all the people I actually liked spending time with as well. So yeah, just that was really difficult.
Yeah, so the complexities of like a heterosexual breakup in there, but then compounded by all of this other stuff and all of these other factors as well. It's hugely complicated and hugely painful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think often in churches we can maybe get so excited that rightly that someone's become a Christian, or that they're leaving a relationship that is not one that God would want for them, but we forget, there's actually a lot of pain and grief and difficulty that needs working through here, and someone needs kind of support and help, like really practically, all those things.
And particularly if they're a baby Christian, they might not have a support network around them. So a church that doesn't know someone very quickly has to become more of a support network than they might have expected to be in the first 3 weeks of someone becoming a Christian.
Yeah. Angela, what have your experiences been like in this kind of whole area of leaving same-sex relationships?
Yeah, for me, it was also kind of in early adulthood. The relationship began at the end of my college, university years. And then she and I actually had to move to different cities after we graduated. So we never got the chance to build a practical life together and share finances or have a house or apartment. It was always the plan. That was the goal. After we had to move to separate cities, we were still in contact, of course, this long distance relationship. And we're but we're going to move to the West Coast. That's the goal. That's the plan. We're going to stay here for right now, save some money, and then we'll move in together. But we didn't get there. It was more of an emotional investment for me. We discovered that we had feelings for each other, and that we've also both had same-sex attractions, but we also believed that it was wrong to be gay, and that, God would hate us, and he hates all homosexuals, and all of this, again, that rhetoric that everyone is steeped in. this was, before 2015, before gay marriage was legalized in the United States. And so having gone to a Christian college also, there were all of these conversations happening on campus about this very topic. There were like panel discussions and chapel things and all of this. And so we were very much like, this is like, we have to be really, really careful. But we also leaned really heavily on the story of David and Jonathan, this like intimate, loving, non-sexual friendship. And our conversations in the beginning of her and my relationship was like, well, why can't we have that in our culture? What is it about this that we just don't have? And why don't we have covenant friendships today? And then it became like, well, why can't we be that example? Even though we have feelings for each other, maybe we could move forward with just being like covenant friends, like David and Jonathan. I will love you as myself. I'll lay down my life for you. So one evening, as we were having one of these discussions, I asked her to marry me. And I even literally said, our culture has no other way to symbolize a lifelong commitment except to say, will you marry me? So will you marry me? And she said yes, and it was very exciting. And then she posed the question back to me, in that same way of like, yes, will you marry me? And I said yes. We wrote out a covenant on, a nice little piece of like fancy paper. We each wrote it and then signed it and exchanged it with one another. These were our vows. And we also even got rings and exchanged rings with each other. So we were effectively emotionally married. Even though we would have denied that to anybody else, we had our own little ceremony, but there were no witnesses. There was no, that's what we did. And that's how that part of our relationship began. We had been friends for a couple of years before that, but yeah, it might have been as wonderful as it sounds, the covenant thing and all of that, but it was the emotional complexities, the crises of faith, the immense conviction, at least for me, I can't speak for her, of course, but then also becoming physical and not having a non-sexual relationship. It became very codependent, and we couldn't tell, and our friends couldn't tell where one person ended and the other person began. So it was just constant, confusion. We were always filled with confusion and guilt and doubt after we were intimate. And so there was this constant cycle of, is this right? Is this wrong? Very emotionally tumultuous. And then towards the end of our relationship, it became this like on again, off again sort of thing. As I mentioned, we did the long distance thing for about 2 years when we were living separately. We kept trying to make plans to move out to the West Coast, trying to live out this covenant, but eventually I got a job overseas. I was like, this is a great way for me to make money, and then we can come back. When I come back to the States, we could do this together. But about 2 months after I moved overseas, we had our final like off again conversation. I held out hope that maybe it would just be a longer period of time than we had done, like as this off again, and then we'll have the on again thing. But when I saw her engagement photos on Facebook a few months after that, engagement to a man, I knew that it was over for the two of us. It was God himself saying to me, I know this hurts, but she's not for you. So we emailed back and forth like a few months down the road and came to a point of reconciliation, but that relationship, even friendship, has not been restored. And I am very much at peace with that. So yeah, that's my story.
Andrew here, just breaking in to tell you about 2 booklets I've written that I think might be helpful to you. And the great news is they are short and they are cheap, and they are full of biblical truth and what I hope is helpful wisdom. The first is called People Not Pronouns, Reflections on Transgender Experience, and it's my attempt to give Christians a starting point to thinking through the complex topic of transgender. I talk about 3 elements I think are needed for a rounded Christian response: a heart response, a head response, and a hope response. And I draw on my own story, the stories of others, and unpack relevant biblical material. The second booklet is called Three or More, Reflections on Polyamory and Consensual Non-Monogamy. This is about the next frontier in sexual ethics, romantic and sexual relationships of three or more people. Something that's already present in society around us, and that's very likely to grow in acceptance in coming years. And the booklet's designed to help us understand this, to think biblically about it and be shaped by grace and truth as we do. And it's aimed at helping us as Christians get ahead of the conversation so we can respond well as it becomes more common around us. Both booklets are available via our shop at livingout.org. Take a look, have a read and enjoy.
So I want to ask about the people around you and kind of how they responded to, I guess, to a breakup or you becoming a Christian or all of the above. Kind of thinking of your church communities, your family, your friends. Let's start with what did they do that was helpful to you at this time in your life?
I think the most helpful thing that was done for me is that someone gave me somewhere to sleep. It was the guy that had taken me to church in the story that talks about, who, if you listen to the other podcast, spoiler alert, he is now my husband. But at the time, we were quite new friends. We'd only known each other for a few months. And I was actually with him when I was made homeless in the middle of the night. And he literally was like, sleep on my sofa. And then when it was looking more permanent, he was like, here, you can stay for as long as you need to. Let's sort out a more permanent way for you to sleep. And also, all of my stuff was locked in the house. I didn't have access to it. And eventually, my ex said that she would put all my stuff in the garage and I could come and get it when I wanted it. And when I went to go and get it, I discovered that A, the garage was leaking, and B, that it wasn't locked. So none of my stuff was secure and safe. And at the time, I had not really met this guy's family. I didn't know them very well. And I was like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to put my stuff? And he phoned his mum and said, Mum, can you come with the big car? And can you put all this stuff in your car? And then can you put it in our house safe? He didn't live with her anymore. He's like, just put it in the bed, in my old bedroom. Keep it safe. And she stored it for me for a good few months. I mean, we did later get together and I have paid her back. She's got grandkids and stuff, but that was like practically just the sort of meeting the practical needs that I have was just amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. Was there anything else, Nat, that people around you did that was helpful?
Yes, there was a minister at church that offered me some wise counsel and offered to be a witness for some of the legal contracts that I had to sign and things like that, because all of that was quite difficult and I was worried that it was going to cost me a lot of money. And just prayed with me and talked through things when I was trying to work out what I should do. Talked with me from the perspective of, this is a breakup, it's difficult, not this is a breakup that should be happening, you should be rejoicing, end of story. But really just, seeing what I was struggling with and asking me how to work through those big feelings, I think. Yeah.
I love it when people are great.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
It is good. Angela, have you also had some people be great to you?
Yes, I did, and still do. The people that helped me the most in that time, like right after the breakup, they just listened. Regardless of their opinion or beliefs, they just let me talk and cry and get mad and grieve without telling me that I was bad or irredeemable or, like Nat said, like this should be happening to you, like I deserved it or something. They didn't do any of that. The people who were helpful didn't do those things or say those things. They didn't try to change me. They just listened and loved and prayed and held me through my tears. A lot of that happened via email and Skype calls because I had just moved overseas and I didn't have a community around me at that point. There was an English speaking church that I had started going to. And so I did have one really good friend, like we clicked right away. She's a bit older than me, so it's like a big sister. She kind of like took me under her wing and, shared her story. It wasn't the same type of situation, but just saying like, these are the things that I've been through in my life and here's what God has done for me. And, so she let me have so much of her time to have those conversations and just let me talk and that sort of thing without trying to say, well, this should be happening to you or anything like that. So yeah, it was a very solo experience for me in that initial breakup time.
Angela, was there anything people did that was not so helpful, or things that people didn't do that you wish they had done in that time?
Yeah, like I mentioned, like part of God leading me overseas was to get me completely alone with him, to say, like him saying, I am jealous for you. And, uh, I want to get you in this place where you are relying on me so that I can refine you, um, and make you more into the image of Christ. And so, uh, again, there wasn't a lot of community around me, and I didn't share about coming out of this relationship with my family, except for my sister, who had known long before I did that I was not straight. And she was like, I don't care what you do with your life. I just want you to be happy. So she's always been supportive of me, but my parents were not so much. My dad refused to talk to me for about 2.5 months, after I finally did tell them the story, actually a couple of years later. I had long been out of that relationship, so that was hurtful. Um, the other things about like what was unhelpful after I had like largely healed from that breakup and got more involved in the communities where I was living overseas, and church and friends and that sort of thing, I was able to tell this story in the past tense. And especially that, like at the time, I was very much like, well, I was gay, but now I'm not anymore. And that's, the great freedom and joy, like, look what God has done. What was most unhelpful at that time, and with that form of my testimony, was in my church community being treated still like a liability. Like at any point she could, fall away and go back to, whatever, or maybe she could do something to one of the other women in our congregation. It was never said like explicitly like that, but there was this sense of like, I'm this person that's done the worst sin out of everybody else. And so we need to be careful. We need to put these things in place so that I don't tempt anyone else, or that I don't even get tempted at all. That even being tempted is a sin. Like that's not, I don't think that's true. We all experience temptation. So yeah, I felt like I always had to be careful not to make other women uncomfortable. And I was warned how much like extra pure I had to try to be. Again, not directly, but there was this like implied, you're here, you're part of this community, but you're also a liability, so we just have to keep an eye on you, sort of thing. That all of that's a much longer story, and I'm still unpacking some of that in therapy right now. But yeah, I would say the parts where we're coming in with this idea of this is who you have to be now, because you shouldn't be gay anymore, or because whatever all of these things are, these ideas and this rhetoric. Yeah, treating someone like they're dangerous still is, that's not a good mental or emotional place to be when you're on the receiving end of that.
No, is that something you can relate to as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing that I found most difficult were people that were almost celebrating the end of it, like celebrating this incredibly difficult, painful thing. Like, oh, yay, but you're doing the right thing now. Isn't this great? Like, yeah, but it's so costly. It's cost me my relationship. It's cost me my friendships. It's cost me my future plans, my hopes, my dreams, all of these things that I thought my life was going this way, and now it's not. And I celebrate God's victory in my life, absolutely. But equally, I really grieve the things that I lost. And I think we need to remember that it hurts as much to end an unbiblical relationship as it does to end a biblical one. And we need to give people as much support for ending the unbiblical ones as for the biblical ones, and not celebrate it as a victory unless they choose to be led by what they need. And if they're grieving, Ecclesiastes said we grieve, we mourn with each other, and we celebrate with each other, but we don't do it sort of in spite of what they're doing. We do it alongside them. We walk with each other. And I think it is really unhelpful when essentially people are projecting what they think should have happened onto a situation and then telling you how you should feel about it. And I've always found that that's not a very helpful way to help somebody in sort of any situation, really. So yeah, it can make you feel as if you should just be happy because you've walked away from sin, and that's the only narrative that's going on. But human beings are so much more complex than that. We have so much more complexity to us, so many more layers to our emotions than that. And so we can celebrate victory at the same time as grieving loss. I would also say that it's not just in the short term, it's longer term as well. So, you know, when you're in a small group and people are reflecting on life experience and they're talking about things that have happened to them, it can be really difficult when your thing that you're talking about is a same-sex relationship to bring that up and have conversation around it. And so it can feel almost like you have to grieve it all over again and hide it again. We need to consider that people have whole lives that they've lived, and we need to be able to walk alongside them when they reflect back on them as much as when they're in the moment of them as well.
Yeah. So much of what you guys have said, I think, is just about walking alongside people or sitting alongside people and just being there with them in whatever they're feeling, not trying to shove them further down the road, not trying to put something on them and like tell them what they should feel or what they should do, but actually just being there with them and showing up really practically to help, showing up emotionally to help, but like in a just being there kind of way. And I guess trusting God with the rest. There is a trickiness in there in that we're called to disciple one another and to kind of encourage one another in that sense to grow in the Lord. But yeah, I think maybe that should be a lighter touch than often it is. Often people will major on that and forget to just kind of recognize the emotions, you know, and I think we should maybe have the balance the other way around. Mm-hmm. That might be helpful. What would you say to the person listening who is in a same-sex relationship right now, is considering leaving that relationship in order to follow Jesus?
So for me, the dichotomy isn't so much life, like from life without Jesus to life with Jesus because of the relationship. Like I knew Jesus from such a young age. It's been 30 years now that I've been walking with him. And, you know, I've been a Christian all along. My ex and I endeavored to follow God even while in the relationship itself, and even with that covenant friendship. We planned to do ministry together when we moved out to the West Coast. And so we were always like trying to follow God and live out this Christian life. So for me personally, it wasn't a before versus after, but it was a refining process. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, it was God saying, I am jealous for you. And you've made an idol of her and of this idea of friendship that you have, and you've lost yourself in the process. And here I'm coming to redeem you from that, you know, that like saving you from yourself kind of thing. Yeah, so I would say to anyone, you know, any other Christian who's in a similar situation, like I'd say, like, you're okay, right? Like God is right there with you, and he's discerning this decision with you. He's not gonna abandon you or reject you. He loves you and he knows you. He's not surprised by any of this. He's not disgusted by you. And it's going to be painful. I hope that it's not, but it probably will be. And it maybe even like me, you've gone into this relationship because you were trying to be faithful. So I would say trust that God really does see you and he knows you. Like from the womb, he has known you, and he's going to walk with you through this pain. It's going to be hard, I know, but he'll be right there.
Wonderful. Thank you. Nat, what would you say to someone?
Kind of similar. I would say I'm not going to downplay the cost. It is going to hurt. Like I wish I could say to you that this is going to be a plain sailing journey. You're going to walk through the door and leave the relationship behind, be with Jesus, and everything will be smooth sailing from there on in. But I make a point not to lie to people. So that's not going to be the case. It's going to be painful. The people around you will probably make some mistakes and not always be very helpful. But here I get to interject my favourite 2-word phrase in the Bible. But God, right? But God has a better plan for you. Okay, his plans are bigger and better than we can even dream, imagine, consider. He has a plan that is so good around the corner, and he will comfort you in a way that those around you might mess up. He will always comfort you, and he never gets that wrong. He's always right. He's always doing it right. So, you know, it will cost, but it is worth it. It sounds really trite and cheesy, but
it's just true, isn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. I haven't ever regretted making that decision. There have been times when I've thought, like, what would have happened if I hadn't made that decision? But I've never regretted choosing Jesus.
Do either of you have anything you want to say to someone listening who wants to support that person?
Yeah, so I would say be led by them. Ask them. Don't be afraid to say to somebody, what do you need in support? Don't assume that you know that what you would want is the same as what they would want. And be led by their emotions. And remember that we are multi-faceted people with complex emotions. And we're not just one thing or another. So, you know, celebrate when they want to celebrate, but grieve when they want to grieve.
For me, it would be like, listen, listen, listen. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? As James tells us. And so the last thing that someone needs in this kind of situation, whether it's leaving a gay relationship or not, like anyone who's going through a breakup or any kind of grief, the last thing that someone needs is someone just like talking at them all the time. But especially in a same-sex relationship that has ended, what they don't need is someone telling them how sinful they are. So yeah, give the person space to feel their pain, their grief, their sadness, their anger even, and don't rush them through that process. Yeah, be led by the person and by the Spirit, as to know like when to say things and what to say. And it's okay if you mess up. Like we've established that here. Nobody's going to be perfect in this. But as much grace and love as you are able to give to the person who is entrusting you with their story and their pain.
Oh, such helpful thoughts. Thank you, guys. As this whole episode actually has been, I've just so enjoyed hearing your stories and your experiences and your wisdom. And I know that the people listening will have enjoyed it and benefited from it too. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, those of you who have been listening. Do hope that it has been helpful to you. We'll put some resources in the show notes for you so you can keep thinking and learning and processing all of this. Do subscribe to the podcast, share it, rate it if you've enjoyed it, and come back again in a couple of weeks for our next episode, which will be the last one in this series on flourishing as a same-sex attracted Christian. Bye for now.